This is the all-new Suzuki e-Vitara, which is Suzuki's first ever fully electric model. They've sold a lot of Vitaras in Ireland, but what about the electric one? Well, this enters a very competitive market. You have things like Kia EV3 and Jeep Avenger, but also larger electric SUVs like Leapmotor B10, MG S5, Kia EV3 and Skoda Elroq. It starts from about €33,000, rising up to about €44,000. So it crosses both class of vehicle, both the B and the C segment. This comes as part of a technology tie-in with Toyota, so it shares a lot with the urban cruiser, which Toyota Ireland is not actually bringing into Ireland. So that should give Suzuki a golden opportunity to sell this, if it's any good. Now, I've spent a week with it, so I've learned a lot about both its strengths and its weaknesses. So if you're interested in buying a new Suzuki e-Vitara in Ireland, do stay watching. So this does look very different to the fuel-powered Vitaras. It's a bit longer in length, wider tyres, and very sleek and aerodynamic around the front. No grille, you've got LED headlights. Along the side, a bit like a coupe with those hidden rear door handles. There are two different grades for the Irish market. There's the Motion that comes on 18-inch alloy wheels, and then there's the Ultra that comes on 19-inch. This one is a Motion trim level. But I think really what will influence your buying decision is both the battery and the range. There are two different battery options. So it kicks off with a 49 kilowatt hour with up to 344 kilometers. That car is priced at about €33,000. And then there's the 61 kilowatt hour in the Motion grade, and that's the entry level grade. It starts from about €37,000. You get up to 426 kilometers. And that's the car that I would recommend. There are more expensive versions if you go for the Ultra grade with more equipment. And then there's also the All Grip 4-wheel drive, which is quite niche in this segment. But I think for most Irish buyers, the 61 kilowatt hour Motion is going to be the best buy. I like what they've done with the rear styling. It's very sleek and modern, particularly when you compare it to the fuel-powered Vitara and the S-Cross. Also a very distinct lighting signature and lots of chunky cladding to give it that SUV vibe. Let's take a look at the boot. So there is 244 litres, and that doesn't look great on paper, but in reality, it's not too bad at all, perhaps a bit on the shallow side. Now those rear seats are clever in that you can move them forward a bit, and then you get 310 litres, and it does go back further so you can push things in there. And those rear seats also split fold 40-20-40, which is unusual for this class of vehicle as well. But things like Skoda Elroq, Kia EV3, and also the Renault 4 would have deeper boots with a bit more volume, so those are worth considering as well. You've got this flat sill, and under here, underfloor storage. However, you can't get the charging cables in there, which is quite surprising. And there's no frunk either, so that's a bit of a pity. But altogether, it's definitely one worth taking a look at, because on paper, it doesn't look great. But in reality, it's not too bad at all. Rear legroom is a strong point, thanks to these clever seats. So I have this seat completely forward. As you can see, I still have space behind myself, but I could let it back a little bit, and that's even more comfortable. And I've created more boot space. This is what it's like when it's fully back and absolutely loads. You've got the completely flat floor. It will be tight for somebody in the middle because it's still quite a narrow vehicle, but they have a flat place to put their feet. There's Isofix on those two outer seats. There's even two USB-C ports. You can let down this middle piece, and then you have an armrest with cup holders. However, that's going to get a little bit noisy having that completely open to the boot, but at least you have that feature, and you don't typically get an armrest in this B segment, so that is a bit of a boon for the e-Vitara. So what's it like to drive on Irish roads? Well, it's actually very good when you look at the handling, the comfort and the refinement. Particularly if you've come from a petrol Vitara perhaps, or a Swift or an S-Cross, because of the battery weight, it just feels so much more solid and more of a quality feel on the road. As you turn into corners, it grips well. The steering has enough precision in it to place the car easily on the road. It's not quite as fun to drive as perhaps the petrol Vitara, but I think it gains a lot in other ways. Then there's the refinement, the smoothness of the electric powertrain. There's not too much road noise either. And When it comes to comfort, I'm actually really impressed with it. So really good on this sort of smooth tarmac on national primary roads. It can feel a little bit bouncy if you come across a series of bumps, maybe on rural roads, but it never gets too noisy or brittle. So I really appreciate that about the new e-Vitara, and it just adds to this feeling of it being an upmarket small SUV. The 61 kilowatt hour Motion that I'm driving, front wheel drive, has a 174 horsepower motor powering those front wheels. 0 to 100 is 8.7 seconds. There's not a huge amount of torque, so it's not going to throw you into the back of the seat every time you touch the accelerator, but it's perfectly fine for something like this. You do have a few different drive modes. There's also a snow mode for the front wheel drive ones that gives you that extra bit of traction on slippery surfaces. There's a few levels of regenerative braking that you can adjust through the screen. I don't find them particularly strong. There is a button here for a full one pedal drive mode on center console, and that definitely works. You definitely know when you've put that on, because you do get that very strong regen effect. There are a few little weaknesses with the e-Vitara. So for a start, the charging. 11 kilowatt AC, which is fine. They all get heat pump as standard, very good. But your DC fast charging rate is only up to 70 kilowatt. So it's off the pace of its rivals. You're looking at 10 to 80% in about 45 minutes, whereas a lot of the rivals would give you an estimate of about 30 minutes. And that's only going to make an impact if you do a lot of long distance driving and you're trying to charge often at fast chargers on the motorway, for instance. If you just tootle around town, do a short commute, then you'd probably never even notice. The cabin gives a really good first impression. So it looks very sophisticated and upmarket, and I do like the quirky design of these air vents. Also, the material quality is good. They have put a lot of gloss black here on the centerpiece. Some people don't like that, but I think it does make it feel very upmarket, particularly when you compare this to other Suzukis in the range, which do feel quite old-fashioned inside. This is completely different. There's a lovely feeling of quality. Very nice steering wheel, feels good in the hands with proper buttons on that. Full digital driver display as standard, and you've got a few different views on that, and it's customizable. And then the touchscreen. This comes with wireless Apple CarPlay and Android Auto. It can be a little bit laggy and slow to respond to inputs, but the graphics do look modern, particularly compared to some other Suzukis. You do have some proper buttons under here for quick features like changing the fan speed. However, when you touch those, the climate menu doesn't come up automatically. So if you're in CarPlay, you have to go out of that to see what you're doing, what temperature you're adjusting it to, or to turn on the heated seats. So I'd like to see that updated. There's cup holders down here, chunky dial for forward and reverse, electronic parking brake. There's space under here and also under this bridge console. So it is easy to interact with these controls. There's a button for drive modes, a snow mode, and also for your one pedal drive. Like in all Suzuki, standard equipment is really, really good. So you get all that digital tech, you get a reversing camera, and lots of standard safety features, including a blind spot monitor. However, if you go up to the 61 kilowatt hour Motion, it adds things like the heated steering wheel, the heated front seats. The Ultra grade adds things like the glass roof, wireless smartphone charging, better seat upholstery, and a more premium sound system. However, I'm not sure it's worth the extra spend, really. But altogether, it's a nice cabin. There's a few little weaknesses in here, particularly around the infotainment. But generally, it feels miles ahead of some of the other Suzukis, like the fuel-powered Vitara. Efficiency is okay. I'm driving this in the Irish summer. We've had a heat wave, so it's as good as it gets in Ireland. And I'm seeing about 17.9 kilowatt hours per 100 kilometers. I thought it would be better in the summertime. It's not criminally bad, but it does affect the overall range of the vehicle. So this one is the one with the bigger battery, up to 426 kilometers WLTP, but I would say that's closer to about 330 kilometers in this sort of summer weather, and I can't tell you what it will be like in winter, but this is my experience testing this in a hot July in Ireland. So it's just something to be aware of. I suppose the problem for the e-Vitara is that there's so many other rivals in this segment offering either similar range or even better range for maybe a few thousand more. So it's a personal choice. I imagine the e-Vitara is really for somebody who just loves Suzuki and maybe you're switching from a petrol Vitara, and then I think you'd be really happy with this. If you're on the motorway a lot, maybe not so because of the charging, but there's still plenty of driving there between battery charges. And it would be ideal if you do maybe just a short commute, or you spend a lot of your time just going in and out of town or short distances on national primary roads like this, then I think you'll really like this e-Vitara. But you just got to weigh up the strengths and weaknesses, and for sure there's a lot of competition from the Elroq, the EV3, even the Kia EV2, the Jeep Avenger. There's so much going on in this segment, but it's a good car. There's so much I like about it in terms of the quality feel, the interior finish, the legroom and the flexibility of those rear seats. So lots to like too, and a great specification. That's all from the cabin of the new Suzuki e-Vitara. You can read more great car reviews over on changinglanes.ie. So thanks for watching, and I'll see you soon.